So we're going to get into the nuts and bolts. On SimplyThick, good news, bad news. In the old days, we used to sell the fact that we had water and xanthan gum and trace amounts of 2 preservatives. Very simple product, very clean, and that was easy. When we reformulated, we end up with a lot of ingredients. And that initially, when we're looking at food labels, typically if you just take a long shot, fewer ingredients is better because fewer ingredients are better, right? Less stuff, et cetera, et cetera.
Keep it simple.
Yes, ma'am. Stupid is where, yeah. We're looking at me, and we know that's where that was going. So SimplyThick is still 75 to 80% water. The original formula was 95, 96% water. So it is still 100% hydrated gel thickener. So if you guys can't read that, that's water, soluble fiber, xanthan gum, glucono-delta-lactone, gallon gum, potassium sorbate is the preservative, calcium chloride, citric acid, sodium citrate, gar gum, and pectin. And you're thinking, that's a lot of ingredients. Why did you do that? And what I'll tell you is once you see how the new product works compared to the old, you'll say, that must have been the recipe that was required to get what we've got now. So it is a more complicated process to manufacture, and there are obviously more ingredients. The downside to the original SimplyThick for some people was the 2 preservatives that we use would leave a bitter finish on your palate. A lot of people could taste it in water and in black coffee, all right? And then other things depending how sensitive a person's palate was. Some people never noticed it. You said in water, you can never taste it.
No.
I could pull it out of water a mile away. And it was just that bitter finish. The good news is with the new formula, we don't have any of that bitter finish at the end. So that's the key component to make sure people understand that was the real trade-off. The mixing is simpler and easier. We don't have to shake it anymore. We'll stir it in with a spoon, and we've gotten rid of that aftertaste. So the 2 biggest objections we typically ran into, now we've got answers for both of those. I've got a printout of all the ingredients.
Okay.
What I found, and there's plenty of websites where you can just research ingredients, is, you know, because a lot of people want to break down nutritional labels, etc. What you'll find is all those ingredients, especially after xanthan gum, are things pretty much like xanthan gum. They are binders, they are fibers, they're all holding things together. Like pectin, we're all familiar, well, RDs in particular. Pectin's found in lots of foods naturally, it's refined and put in as a stabilizer and an ingredient. So all these ingredients are either stabilizers for the other ingredients, or they actually help do exactly what the xanthan gum does. And still SimplyThick is 100% hydrated, which is the difference between SimplyThick and all the other thickeners that come in a powdered form. They're not hydrated. And that'll come up again shortly.
And the reason there's 5 calories is there's a gram of carbohydrate from the fiber.
That's,
So,
that-
okay.
We
that's a
now
good-
have 5 calories.
And that's a great point. Our original formula, 0 calories, 0 carbs, no lactose, no gluten. It was kosher. The new formula, 5 calories, all carbohydrates, so it's still low to no glycemic effect.
Right.
Still no lactose, no gluten, still kosher, so all those
No lactose.
subtleties are still the same. All right? But from 0 calories to anything is a difference, and so we want to make sure that's noted. Okay,
So the
go ahead, Roger.
So the contraindications for starches, the starch powders, we all know that forever, there weren't any options. So we used them and we knew that our residents, patients, clients were getting the thickener. We all know the problems that they present. If you go back to your 8th grade science class, and we learned all about digestion and, you know, how our system breaks foods down, saliva plays a key role. And there's a enzyme, thank you, enzyme in our saliva called amylase. And that, when it makes contact with the cornstarch, breaks it down. So as soon as that cup hits the patient's mouth, saliva mixes, it's compromising the integrity of that liquid. If you've got somebody who's holding liquids, or you've got somebody who's got a little bit of pocketing going on, or they've got bolus formulation issues, and you know they're doing the AP rocking, and it's just staying in that oral cavity, the longer it's mixing with their saliva, the thinner it breaks down. Then you risk that thinner liquid spilling prematurely over the base of the tongue, maybe some premature aspiration or aspiration prior to the swallow initiation. So the starches pose a lot of problems And we have to be very careful when we're using them, because when you use the cornstarches, there have been different studies that show you can make literally a ball out of cornstarch and water, roll it, then you let it release, and it just kind of oozes and spreads. Think about the swallow. You've got the muscle contraction. Well, after the initial swallow, you've got a lot of residue that maybe didn't clear with the initial, and that could pose a problem with subsequent blocking. So we have to be very careful when we're using that particular product.
Now, when we didn't have anything else to thicken beverages with, starting 30 years ago, cornstarch, and shortly after that, modified food starch or cornstarch, and that modification was essentially to take plain old cornstarch and at the manufacturing level, agglomerated, which my explanation for that is essentially taking that corn flour and popping it like popcorn. So if you've ever looked at the starch thickeners, they're a lot fluffier than regular corn flour or cornmeal, and that's why. They grind it super fine, they essentially pop it like popcorn to give it a better surface area so it'll absorb more efficiently, but it's still 100% modified food starch, and food starches do what food starches do, which is break down when exposed to amylase. They can only hold so much moisture. If you guys have ever seen, in the old days, the thickened with cornstarch and the contents of that cup start to separate, that's where we're going. So no matter what we get for beverages, we would say stay as far away as you can from cornstarch or modified food starch thickeners, where that's the only ingredient. A lot of companies now, almost everybody is making a xanthan gum thickener, whether it's gel like SimplyThick or powder. So no matter what, for beverages, we would say get away from cornstarch. This is the study that shows that in less than 10 seconds it breaks down, and 1 milliliter into 200 milliliters of your drink in a cup breaks down in less than 10 minutes. So that explains why when you come back later and you see that the cup is separated.
And, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, not to mention that it thickens as it stands and it's like mud.
Yes.
After a while, if your residents don't drink it fast enough or they don't get assistance quickly enough.
But then you've also got backwash if they're doing, and so you end up with amylase from saliva in the cup as
Right.
well. So it can also get thinner if you're not watching.
Precisely.
You don't get precision in what they actually get viscosity-wise.
Right.
Well, and it's not palatable, and then your
Yeah,
nursing
it's
home
disgusting.
residents don't want to drink it, and then we've got
Dehydration,
skin
UTIs,
Skin breakdown,
Yeah.
UTIs,
That's
and
absorbed
septicemia
as well.
And now there's a better solution, and that's the
Yes.
other part. And 20 years ago, we didn't have anything to move to.
We've
but-
always done the best we could.
Right,
but-
precisely.
Yeah.
I may have been sitting up, yeah, I did. Okay, second one we wanted to cover was the unhydrated gums, and that's the second FDA page that you guys have. And we've highlighted some of the captions.
You want to be careful when you're using the powdered xanthan gum that it's mixed properly. Working in acute care, I can tell you that if we're mixing beverages up on the floor, we're grabbing the juice out of the nursing station fridge, opening it up, throwing our thickener in. Well, if you look at the instructions carefully, the manufacturer says put the product in the cup first and then add your beverage in order for it to be mixed appropriately. I can say firsthand that I don't think that happens 100% of the time. Therefore, the patients could have issues. It might not blend properly. They might get a lump of the xanthan powder. What if that's aspirated? What if that's hangs out in the pure form? And it could be problematic. So the difference between the hydrated xanthan gum and the powders, ours mix it, pour it immediately, it can be served, not a problem. With these powders, different manufacturers, which we'll get to, will show you that they're different ounces, different products. There are specific instructions to follow to ensure that is safely consumed.
So the overlying, the beauty of SimplyThick when John Holohan invented it was that it was simple. You put it in, you shake it, you're ready to go. If you thought, oh, that was supposed to be honey, you put in more, you shake it, nectar goes to honey. So it was really simple, and that was the beauty of it. And the good news is the new product is essentially even simpler. So we don't have to worry about so many restrictions that we get into when we're trying to hydrate the powdered thickener and thicken the beverage at the same time.